Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Tosh Customs, and today we are doing part 2 of customizing 101 figure disassembly. So the last one we talked about how to take apart a torso, so all the ways to crack open the joints. And now, this time, we are going to be talking about unpinning all the arms and some other simple joint takedown. So as you can see here, I've already gotten a little bit ahead of you guys, and just so that I can show you what it looks like internally, and then as well as I have some hot water off to the side right now with a bunch of joints and stuff in it, and I'll actually be punching stuff out for you on camera. So looking at this first, we have the shoulder right here. Once again, we talk about how it's a little bit staged and it has these little soft teeth. And then we have the mushroom peg that goes right in to the bicep. So this would just plug in, and so when you heat it up with water, you just pull it out. You can use a heat gun, but the only downside of a heat gun and any time in customizing is heat naturally dries plastic out. It starts cooking plastic, which means your plastic is going to bubble up, it's going to deform, it's going to smell bad. You don't want to do that. It's a little bit poisonous if you heat up and dry up plastic too much, at an extremely quick rate. So I like to use water. It keeps the plastic moist, obviously, and so you're not going to have to really deal with plastic cooking, or it's going to take a lot longer for your plastic to cook under high heat, which is a perfect way to soften plastic up to take it apart. So you would pop that out. So now in terms of the joints, the way it works for a double joint is we have 2 pins, as you can see, and each of those pins is going to run through the joint like so. So when you see, we put it all together, we have these 2 holes, and you just run a pin through it. So Marvel Legends specifically, they go small to large when you're plugging the pins in. So you're going to take the small side, and you're going to plug it in, and it's going to run across. So then when you're punching it out, you're going to want to punch it from the outside of the arm. You're going to want to punch the small side and pop it out. When I do punching, like I said in the last video, I use a sanding tool because it just happens that this is a flat edge that's the same size as all their pins. You can use whatever you want. This is just what I've ended up at because it's a flat, small surface. But I'm sure that there's plenty of other people who have different tools. Mine just happens to be a little makeshift and multi-purpose. So that is that. So that's the basics of these pin joints. So let's actually look at doing it on camera. So I'm going to take this little towel out to keep the workspace a little bit more dry. And I have a bunch of figure body parts inside this very hot cup of water here. As you can see, I also did move on to the butterfly joint. I cracked the butterfly body ahead of you guys, just so that you wouldn't have to sit and watch me crack it open on camera. I just talk about the places you need to attack. So let's actually take a look at the legs here. So the legs, we have double pin joints right there. We have a thigh cut, a calf cut, and a foot. And I'm gonna try to take it off at the thigh cut and at the ball joint, but I'm not sure if all of that is quite warm enough, but we'll see. So I'm gonna put that down there. I'm going to move the cup off screen again. And then let's dry it off real quick, just so that's not too warm. Let's see what we can pull apart here. We should be able to pop the ball joint off. Yeah, this is gonna need to be warmer if I want to pop the ball joint out of there. But I can do a thigh cut. So there we go. Thigh cut pulls out. It's just sort of it's not really a mushroom peg. I don't know what you'd call this. But this pops out right there. Then I'm going to take my little punching tool, and once again, outside in, so small side, and we're just going to take that and punch that out, as you can see. And so then there we go, we have our first pin, and we'll push this off to the side. So there we go, thigh is free. Now we're going to come down to the second one, once again, outside in. Let me get that on the center that came outside in. So we're going to take it, punch it out again, just like so. Second pin, pull that out. Our knee is free. And then if we want to, thigh cut should be pretty simple. It's been sitting in warm water for a while, so it's pretty soft. So you want to give yourself adequate time. So there we go. calf is free. And then finally the foot, it's also on one of those pins. So there we go. That is out as well. So if we're looking at this as a whole, here to a pin, to the knee, to the pin, oops, to the pin, upper calf, lower calf, and then far on the edge of the screen is your foot. So that's how all of that, breaks down right there. So that's your leg. So you've seen your arm, you've seen your leg. I mean, this is honestly everything for disassembly. Really, that's all you need. And then, you know, if you've done this, we'd have to start getting into prepping. And I might talk about prepping in this video, but we'll see. But for now, there we go, fully disassembled. I'm just going to take all of these parts and put them off to the side, because we have one more thing that I really want to talk about, which is let's look at the butterfly joint. And let's talk about cracking a butterfly jointed figure open. So actually, I'll just leave that off to the side for now. So first and foremost, we have a butterfly jointed body right here. How in the world do you drill this one apart? You may be asking. And I would say, well, curious customizer, welcome to the hobby. Let's talk about it. So, I'm going to sort of squeeze all this back together here, if it'll work with me. There we go, squeezed all back together. So, there are two different types of butterfly bodies, and we need to know this in order to help us take it apart. We have this older butterfly teenage body. There are still a handful of figures made on this body, but not too many anymore. And this one, you can see if I move it, it flexes out. Why does it do that, Tosh? You may ask. That's because it is only fixed in the butterfly joint at the bottom. This top, it's completely floating. There's no connection in there whatsoever, and so it wiggles around a ton, and it's not very stable. It only has a tab down below. However, this new modified body is much more secure, and you can see it has tabs on both sides. And so when we pull this body apart, you can see that on the front here, there are little clasps on both sides for that arm to fit into, just like so. So that's how that works. So now in terms of drilling, it's essentially the same thing as we would do with a standard Marvel Legends body. We're going to do it at the base of the neck, but we're going to do it a lot closer to the base of the neck because we want to miss that, that butterfly joint hole. We don't want to drill into the butterfly joint and mess it up. So you're going to do it right, like right below where it turns that corner. And then likewise down here, just under the armpit is perfectly fine. We talked about seeing what kind of plastic you're dealing with and sort of tapping on it. So you can see this is still a little bit of a lower sound. And so it's going to crack a little bit easier. Plastic that's very tough has a little bit of a higher pitch when you tap on it. And it just means that you're going to have to struggle a little bit more to get it all open. But simple 4 drills, and generally it cracks. The important thing to note about this body, though, is there are actually 2 other pins that sit at the center of the body. And depending on the type of plastic and if it wants to work with you, these can be very, very stubborn. Thankfully, one separated out and the other one snapped, which is perfect for me. I was able to take it apart with no resistance. However, that's not always the case, and you may or may not deal with something a lot more difficult when taking apart these types of Marvel Legends bodies. So I want to throw that out there as a heads up. So now let's talk about disassembling the arm here. So this joint, I'm going to pull the one out of the water, I think. And I'm going to throw this body back into the water. So let me pull it out. Ooh, wow, water's very hot. Thankfully I have pliers to help myself pull it out of the water here. All right, so the way the shoulder joint works in here is that it's plugged in to the butterfly. So I'm going to dry this off, and you'll see here, so we can pull that off the bicep, and then I usually like having a sculpting tool or something to help pry it out, because you just need a little bit extra torque on it that you're not going to be able to get with your fingers. And that's just the way it's going to be. You just got to work at it and pry it for a second, but you will be able to get it out. And I'm trying to do this on camera, but it's very tough for me to get the force I need. Come on, work with me, buddy. It's almost there. It's coming out. Slowly but surely. There we go. Woo! So, as you can see, it's just a pin that plugs into the shoulder right there. And it's just tough because it's hard to get a grip on it. But yeah, just plugs in like that, and all you have to do is pop it out. So, pretty simple stuff. And then once you come down to the arm, same thing, outside in, you're just going to want to punch the pins out. If I can get a good angle on it. Everything behind a camera lens is so much more difficult, man. Like, this would normally be super easy, but I'm fighting for my life out here. I'm fighting the chance of looking stupid on camera to you guys. And I want you to appreciate that. I'm putting my dignity on the line. I'm putting 7 years of experience on the line to not be able to punch the pin out of the arm here. And I'm about to give up on it. Honestly. There we go. Pins out. That one was super difficult for no reason. But once again, pins come out the same way. The other thing is hands. These hands, as you can see, they have a very, very shallow pin when it goes into the wrist. There are some hands that have a lot chunkier of pins, and you're just going to have to soften up the wrist to pull them out. When we talk about prepping and customization in a different video, we will talk about actually resizing some of these joints or resizing the actual wrist hole in order to accommodate whatever hands you want to be adapted for your new custom body. And that is a thing. You know, sometimes you want fists, or you have a pair of fists and you're like, I really want to put these on the figure, but either the peg is really bad and it's too large or it's too small, or the port here is too large or too small. And so we'll talk about dealing with that as well. Same thing, in a later video, we will talk about how to fit heads onto various neck joints. But that is not the point of this video. The point is disassembly. And so that is how you deal with the butterfly jointed body. Now, that covers that. So the last thing I really want to talk about is we're going to start getting into identifying areas for prep. So what I mean by prepping a figure is making sure that there's no paint rub, because all of this is hard plastic, right? So paint rub is anything, is around any joint that moves that could be damaged. And so if we're going to come back to this body, and we'll just sort of fold this up, tuck it away for right now. So if we're coming back to the basic Marvel Legends body here, there's going to be a shoulder joint in here, right? And so it's going to be sitting in here. It's going to be rotating and flexing up and down. So I'm going to want to sand out all of this. You can use sandpaper. My first couple customs, I did it completely by hand. I'd recommend getting a Dremel. It's essentially like a drill with sanding tips, and so you can just spin it. You can just spin it and drag it all around the joints, and shave off all the plastic. So you're going to want to sand there. For paint rub's sake, there's a hinge right here. So when I take apart this body, I'm going to want to sand down the actual surface of the hinge that's exposed so that I can paint over it. Likewise, in these shoulders here, we have a hinge here. I'll want to move this around and actually flex it up and down and make sure all of that is sanded out so I can paint on it. Because the bicep plugs into the shoulder, I'm going to need to sand up in here as well. And then because I've taken these apart, I'm going to want to sand this down just a little bit, and likewise sand the actual hinge of the elbow down a little bit. When I come to the forearm, you can sand this down, and depending on the figure and the tolerance, you sand this down as well. And then for hands, for wrists, you're also going to need to sand down at that joint. And sometimes I'm not going to try to pull this out right now. And sometimes you're also going to have to sand down the inside of your port as well. So you'd want to sand down the inside of here as well. Coming down to your torso, since it is cracked, I would recommend sanding down the inside where that ab crunch is. So sand down right on the inside of there, and same thing on the back, so that as you're flexing up and down, you're not going to be scratching any paint that's on your lower torso. Coming down to your crotch, you're going to want to sand down all of this inside, because your legs are going to need to stretch out and move around, you know, all in there. So you're going to want to sand that down. Once again, same concept when you come down to the knees here. You really don't need to do your swivels here and here. You can sand them if you want to, but honestly, like the area where it sort of cuts over is so little that it doesn't really matter if it's the original color, at least in my humble opinion. If you want to sand it and go crazy and paint the insides of your swivels, go ahead. I think it's a little overkill. Knees, same thing. Punch the pins out, do both the thigh and the joint, do the top of the calf and the joint itself. And then when you pull the foot out, same thing. Do your hinge, and then I would also recommend actually sanding down the inside of the foot so that as your foot moves around and you use that ankle rocker or that ankle swivel, ankle hinge, whatever you want to call it, you're not scuffing up your ankle, because this is going to move and overlap on some stuff. So you're going to want to sand everything down that has movement that can conflict with each other. So when we list it out, it does seem like a daunting task. Honestly, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. It will eventually just be like a really annoying chore to you, and it's not going to bother you so much. I think at the beginning it's very intimidating because you're like, holy cow, this is a lot of stuff to think about. You do it a couple times, and then it's not so shabby after that. So that is just a very, very general look at how to sand and prep. I don't think I'll be sanding things down on video. I don't think that's something you guys necessarily need, but I think in the next video, I will talk about in a little bit more depth, both about sanding, and I will do that on the butterfly jointed body, as well as resealing all the drill holes that you've made. So we'll talk about both of those in the next part. I think I'll do one part a week, by the way. I realize that this is the second video now, so you've figured it out. But I think I'll probably do one part a week, maybe 2 parts a week. So until next time, thank you all so much for supporting this series. I hope it is a helpful resource, and I will catch you in the next episode. Take care.